I think positional leadership is overrated. I think it matters much, much more to be an influential leader. Sometimes that influence comes from the position, but it's not about the title as much as your communication and how you handle yourself and others in those situations that creates and cultivates more influence.
Welcome to the Weekly Leadership Experience, a place for leaders to get inspired, be challenged, and grow. I am your host, Rashad Oberlander. Let's get started. Today's episode of the Weekly Leadership Experience is brought to you by my 7-day Leadership Growth Challenge. It's a free challenge that I've created, and it's delivered by email over the course of 7 days. I've created 7 compelling questions to challenge various aspects of your leadership, the way you lead, and why you lead. Go to rashadoberlander.com and scroll down until you find the 7-day leadership challenge, or look for the link in the show notes. Hello, leaders, and welcome to this week's show. Today I am joined by Elizabeth McCormick, former U.S. military Black Hawk helicopter pilot and now international motivational speaker specializing in leadership, sales, and safety. Elizabeth is also the best-selling author of The Pilot Method, The 5 Elemental Truths to Leading Yourself in Life. Elizabeth is also a founding member of the John Maxwell team of speakers and is joining me today to talk about how we show up as leaders and how to face your fears. Elizabeth, welcome to the Weekly Leadership Experience.
Excited to be here.
Well, welcome. I'm so glad you've joined me today. I'm excited to chat with you. So let's get a little bit of background information. Growing up, did you always want to get into the military, or what was the path that got you there?
No. No. In fact, my college degree was in art.
It's a far cry from...
It's a far cry from aviation and the military.
Mm-hmm.
But when in my last year of college, I met who I affectionately now call the starter husband. So I met him, and he was, swept me off my feet, and we got married in my last year of college, and he was already signed up to join the military. So we actually got married while he was home for Christmas for his break from the military service, and ended up moving with him to Fort Polk, Louisiana. And I found out there were no jobs, especially for someone with an art degree. So he kind of, he was doing this military thing, and I couldn't find a job. And so I was miserable for lots of reasons, but mainly because I felt like, my life had no traction or movement or anything going on. And I had all this potential that wasn't being fulfilled. And so one night I looked at him and I was like, well, if he could be in the Army, I guess I could do that too.
Well, why not?
Why not? Let's do that. Yeah, didn't know it was hard.
No kidding. So you joined the military. Now, did you join the military with the intention of getting into aviation, becoming a Black Hawk pilot, or was that something that evolved over time?
So it did evolve. At first, it was, okay, I'm going to join the military. Okay, what's a cool job? I don't know. What's a cool job? I mean, he was a medic and drove a field ambulance, and that's definitely was not what I wanted to do. And again, art degree, probably not a lot of call for that, to use that in the military. So I just kind of asked around. I was really curious. I didn't know. And I'm still a big believer in, I don't know what I don't know, and to kind of be curious about things and ask a lot of questions. So I sat on, back then, all they had on base for a restaurant was a Burger King. And it's probably still there, by the way. But I sat in the Burger King during, like, they have a period between working out, physical fitness, PT in the morning, and then reporting to duty. And that's when a lot of people came in to get their breakfast, right? Because it was fast and it was on base, and sometimes at lunch. So I would sit there during that breakfast and lunchtime and look for people that were by themselves and say, hey, can I ask you a few questions? And I basically went on this fact-finding mission and researched and asked questions. And I just kept asking, if you had to do it over again, what would you do different? And, and I always ask, what's the coolest job? And over again, everyone said, oh, I'd be a pilot. I wish I had better vision, or I wish I had this. And I didn't even know about it. And I wish I'd be a pilot. I could be a pilot. And so I just said, well, I could do that. I didn't know it was hard.
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny because, until someone tells you it's hard, like you don't know it's hard, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, a lot of things in life, you grow up and you're like, I mean, you're a kid, you go, I'm going to jump off this roof. So you jump off the roof. Nobody tells you it was dangerous, and you don't know it's dangerous until you do it, right? So
yeah. I mean, how many times you do swords with a stick until somebody tells you could look your eye out with that?
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
you don't know. It wasn't until it really was hard. And it wasn't until I was already in that I really understood the astronomical odds of what I had accomplished to get the spot in the military. Because when my packet had gone to the Pentagon, and this is after the recruiter said no, the flight doctor was like, little girl, taking my testing that I had to take, all the skills tests, they were like, don't you know this is hard? I mean, everywhere I went. And then I still get it. But what I found out is all those tests, all the results, all the paperwork, when it went to the Pentagon, there were only 2 spots in the United States of America.
Mm. Wow.
I didn't know any of that until I was already in and passed and on the other side. And they were like, oh, you're one of the ones. And I'm like,
wow.
Because it was a special program. So part of that research is when I decided to become a pilot, I went out to the flight line and asked the pilots, how do you become a pilot? I just was kind of tenacious and asking and talking to anybody who was willing to talk about it and find out what do I need to do and what's the right vocabulary. And so I came up with this really simple, and it's great for leaders, a really simple 3-step framework for resistance when you're met with resistance. And it's do your research, which I'd already done. Know what to say. Like when you're talking their language instead of yours, whether that's technical vocabulary, in my case, military jargon, or even if it's an actual language, right? But when you speak their language, they're more open to what you're saying. So knowing the vocabulary and the language of what to say, and then say it with absolute confidence, even if you have to fake it.
That is really good advice.
It's super simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just not easy when you're in those moments.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, when you're faced with resistance, most people either try to just bull through it or they back away, which neither one is really ideal. Speaking about cool jobs, like a friend of mine, he's learned to pilot just a small, like 2-seater helicopter, like civilian use, private, kind of like, I mean, it's kind of like the starter aircraft, I guess, for civilian licensing. But he spent a lot of time and money, right? There's a lot of hours you got to put in. You got to learn a lot about a helicopter. It's a lot more complicated, from my understanding, than, a small airplane, for example.
Yes.
And he told me that each additional helicopter, if he wanted to, move to a 4-seater helicopter or anything bigger, he had to take additional training and licensing to kind of move through each one. So a Black Hawk helicopter is a very large piece of equipment. Can you tell us what your learning experience was like and what piloting a Black Hawk helicopter is all about?
Absolutely. Well, I didn't start in a Black Hawk. So we start in a smaller, kind of like your friend. We started in a smaller model. For us, it was the Huey helicopter, which is an old Vietnam aged Bell helicopter. And now since then they have changed and now have a civilian model where they can actually get parts to fix. So always that's useful. Important. Maintenance is important. So, but yeah, we had start off with a smaller, aircraft for training. And then at the end of flight school, it since again has changed. And now you go into your what they call advanced aircraft, which is a Black Hawk is one of them. We had the choice of advanced aircraft of a Black Hawk, a Chinook, which is the one that looks like a banana and has 2 rotor systems. And then there's the Kiowa Warrior Scout, which is actually another little two-seater small one. And then the Apache, which is the gunship one where they sit tandem. Those are the 4 advanced aircraft that we could choose from when we got through flight school. And I had requested the Black Hawk because the Huey only had 1 engine, and I kind of like the idea of having 2. Little safer. One goes out, you have a spare. It's good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I was all about safety. About safety. So I had asked for the Black Hawk and received the Black Hawk transition, and then they sent us through another type school at the end for that. Now they've kind of integrated, and you go into your 4 or one of the different aircraft for earlier in training, so you have more hours and more experience when you finish flight school and go to your first assignment as a pilot. So it's a little bit different. But the Black Hawk, so the Huey still had a lot of manual pieces on it. And the Black Hawk did as well. But of course, we had 2 engines, a lot more power. We like our power, a lot more power, a lot more control, a lot more automation also, and computer systems and things in it. The either one, the Huey or the Black Hawk, I liken it to being in the front car of a roller coaster without a track. So imagine if you're in that front car and you see everything that's coming, you're going up the hill and you get to decide where it goes. So it's all these instantaneous, some have to happen so fast you don't even realize you're thinking, all these decisions that have to be made in any moment of any time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a lot going on and a lot of decisions to make. I did listen to another interview of yours where you talked about all the different things that are going on inside of a Black Hawk. So it sounds like a lot.
Yeah. Should I recap for your listeners? Because now they're probably going,
I would love that.
I
would love that. Let's do that.
Yeah. So and in fact, when I speak at events, I'm famous. What I'm most famous for is that I teach the audience how to fly the helicopter. So we'll give you listening right now a little taste of that. So your right hand is on a cyclic. The cyclic is a stick. It goes down between your legs, down into the floorboard, up into a rotor system, and it controls pitch of the rotor blades. So it controls which direction you go. So I want you, if you imagine you have your hands straight out in front of you with your elbow locked out and straight, that's how far the cyclic would be in front of you. It's about that. And then your left arm at the same time, because your right hand, now that it's out there, you don't let go because there's no autopilot in these helicopters. And then your left hand, I want you to imagine your elbow is pinned to the floorboard. So it's a lever off the floorboard. And all you can move is the front part of your hand up and down. And the higher you pull that's called the collective. The higher you pull the collective, the more fuel goes into your engine. So you get airspeed, you get altitude. And if you pull a lot of collective and a lot of power, you get both airspeed and altitude. So you're doing that with your right hand, your left. But what happens is anytime you give more power to the engines or less power to the engine, it also puts less power into the tail rotor in the back. So even though you're flying straight, as you pull power or decrease power, your tail kicks off to the side. So you probably have seen like airplanes that come off kind of into the wind and they come off kind of kicked off to the side. Number one, they're trying to stay in the wind. Number two, they're trying to stay in the wind. So they're aerodynamic, right? And it looks weird. They call it crabbing in airplanes. Well, in a helicopter, it's not good. It's not aerodynamic, and we're already fighting all the aerodynamic forces. So you have foot pedals. And so your foot pedals, at the same time your right hand and left hand are busy, your feet are constantly minutely shifting on the foot pedals, which controls a pitch of a tail rotor blade and gets your tail behind you where it belongs. And then you have a center console, avionic navigation equipment. It tells you who to talk to, where to go. You have 4 feet of instrument panel to scan to make sure you stay in system limits, because even though you are in the air, there are still speed limits. Just no signs. There are no signs hanging up in the air as you're flying. So you have to have every single limit on every single gauge memorized. And then on top of all that, you have windows. You have your front window, big windshield along the front. You have a door window here on the side. on each side. And then you also have a chin bubble window down here at your feet. And if you were to look at your feet right now, if you're driving, don't do that. Please keep driving, right? So, but if you were to look at your feet right now and look down, because when you fly a helicopter and you lose your engine, that's where you want to go, which is why I wanted 2 engines in a helicopter. Because in a helicopter, you're going to go straight down. You're going to drop like a rock. There's no glide. When we lose power, we lose all aerodynamic forces for that. And you drop straight like a rock. So there's all that. And then there's more, because you got the helmet on. And with the helmet, you have a microphone. And with the microphone, you talk internally to your crew and externally to air traffic control, because there is no such thing. I'm sure your friend will tell you this too. No such thing as a quiet pilot. You're constantly communicating internally and externally. So I call it's multitasking on steroids.
Well, I mean, that's a lot. Like,
most people are like out by the time I get to the feet. They're just like, oh, I'm out.
Yeah. I mean, so I think that like you talk about teaching the audience to fly, right? And that you've got an acronym for fly. But like, just a quick thing about that, like, what can we take in that and apply to what we're doing on a day-to-day basis in our leadership or our life?
Yeah. So that level of multitasking, the pace of business and leadership is really fast now. I mean, it's faster. It's faster than it's ever been. I mean, where our phone is ringing, our emails dinging, our text messages are blinging, sometimes all at the same time. And we have to instantly microprocess our decisions and prioritizations on the fly all day long. And we don't even realize how many decisions we're making, how much processing we're doing, how much information is coming in. And I mean, it's no wonder everyone is feeling oversaturated and exhausted right now, right? Because there's just everything's going on at the same time, and it's all so fast. And a lot of times everything is urgent. So, what I liken it to is your work as a leader, whatever role you are in, whatever you are doing, but your work as a leader is you in the pilot's seat. But you're the pilot in command. Like you're in charge of you. You're in charge of your job, right? You're in charge of who you lead. We know that piece, but we don't often think about how we are and how we are showing up in the situations that we're in. And that is what makes a huge difference when you're in crisis. It makes a huge difference when there's any kind of controversy or stress going on in how you show up, because it's kind of like the I keep thinking of Monsters Inc., the Pixar show, and you've got the old lady behind the desk. I'm always watching. Always watching, so it's kind of like social media and video and cameras and everything's kind of like that, right? But the fact is, as a leader, someone's always watching, and they want to see how you show up in those situations, because they're going to key off you.
Yeah. And so, like as there's always so much going on, like deciding how you show up in those moments is what's crucial.
And I think a lot of leaders are reacting. They are purely reacting. And if you're reacting, you're already behind. Like in the aircraft, when I respond to what's going on in the aircraft, I'm already behind. Everything is about being proactive. And am I allowed to curse? I'm good at that. Is it okay if I curse a little bit? Just one word. It's okay. So I was not a great pilot when I first started. I had lots of struggles. I had a bad instructor that started. I was not a good pilot. It wasn't until I got a little further in my career as a pilot, and I realized like I could get in the aircraft as a pilot, and I can have the aircraft intimidate me, and I could be behind the aircraft. And that's what happened when at first, right? It wasn't until I came in with a different attitude and said, this is my bitch, right? This aircraft, and it is, this aircraft, my right hand, my left hand, my feet, everything together, this is going to do what I want it to do, right? It is mine to control. And it's a whole different mindset of leadership too, to go in and say, I'm not saying say this to your people, please don't do that. That's bad. But going in and saying with the attitude like, this job is mine, right? It is mine. I'm going to go in with the ownership. I'm not going to go in hesitant or timid or wondering what other people are thinking or guessing or saying, right? You show up with that level of leadership and strength that comes from within you. And that's when I got to be a much better pilot.
Yeah, awesome. And I mean, like, I think that's so important, right? Is like you say, the responding to what's going on around you, you're already too late, and like changing your mindset to this is me, this is mine, and I'm going to go out and take control, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a simple but not easy, like you said earlier.
I mean, it's all like it layers. It becomes foundational, and it builds on. But boy, it makes a difference when you're looking at, okay, instead of waiting for a customer or a client, someone to call, ask me for something. What do I think they need? Let's anticipate instead of react. And if you're a pro, I call it being a proactive leader. If you can be proactive in what you do and anticipate, even if you anticipate wrong, you're still ahead of the game.
Yeah. It's and then really important. I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing. Shifting gears just a little bit, kind of, I feel like it's a kind of a good segue, but how often did you actually face fear as a pilot?
Oh, geez. I don't know. Something about an aircraft that's defying aerodynamic forces and could crash any day. That might, have a little bit of something to do. I do with, feeling fearful. But here's what counteracts fear. It's a couple things, but mainly what counteracts fear is training. Like when you train, you like, there was a reason flight school is 42 weeks, 42 weeks every single day. You had said your friend that has flown helicopters. Well, my training I received with the military, if I had paid for it on the outside, it would have been $750,000 between flight time, training, maintenance, fuel, the ground school, just everything that I received. It's a massive investment, right, of training. But when I left flight school, it wasn't done. I still had training in my unit. And then I had to get training on the area of operations we were flying in and the procedures and policies that were unique to every base, and then the missions they flew. And so training, and even then, when I was, quote, fit, and I could start flying missions as a co-pilot, I was then training for the next step, which is pilot in command. So the training never ends. And I think, as leaders, we're learners. The training never ends. We always could be striving to get better at what we do and who we are and how we show up as a leader and our technical expertise in our industry and everything that we do. So the one thing about fear is training. Because when you know that you have that training behind you, your confidence level rises, your competence level rises, and then you can focus on the really exceptional pieces. So I call that being on a mission of excellence, where you're on that higher level and at the top of your game when you're at that. And that's, again, it's not easy, is it?
No, it's not. And, I think that fear is something that, like, we think about doing things that are scary, like piloting a helicopter or, standing on the edge of a cliff or, those kind of things. But like fear in other areas becomes something that you kind of shove to the side or sweep under the rug, or like, I mean, my kids are little, right? And, I'm afraid of the thing under my bed. And it's like, oh, honey, there's no thing under your bed. But like, you can't reason with that sometimes, right? But then but then as adults, it kind of becomes like, we don't really talk about it, and we don't find a place for it in leadership. And that's something that I've been trying to explore. So like, how do we face fear better? Like, how do we accept its place in our, stream of emotions, but then also push through?
Yeah. First of all, it's a choice, right? It's a choice to face our fears or to ignore them, sweep them aside, and a lot of people do, oh, I'm afraid of heights. I'm never gonna fly a helicopter. Well, you're too busy flying the helicopter to be afraid of flying, right? When you're flying a helicopter, because there's too much going on. Versus when you're a passenger in an airplane and you look out the window, that's all you have to focus on. So I think perspective and focus kind of can help alleviate fear. But what I've seen, because I've done a lot of studying of myself, but around motivation, and what I see is that a lot of times fear can be a great motivator. So I'll get a really big common fear I hear in corporate America is I'm afraid of looking bad, right? I'm afraid of embarrassing myself or my boss or my company, or or looking bad or letting somebody down, or it might be your family. I'm afraid of letting them down. That's a societal fear, right? It's not a fear of death. It's not, but it's a societal, and that's a really real fear. But that fear motivates us to get more training, to take a class, to read a book we might not read, to learn something that we haven't done before. And so, but we just don't think of it that way, do we? We don't think of that as a fear, right? So, maybe it's more categorized as a worry, or some other emotion in that, but it's a fear, just like the other one. So what if we took that same kind of mindset towards some of the other things we're afraid of, and treat them more like a project? Okay, I need to do this and I need to do this, and kind of fear busted our psyche and ourselves, and did some things we weren't afraid of. And you know what? I bet if you did some things that you're afraid of, and there's going to be things you don't like. Like, I really, don't care for snakes. My starter husband had a snake and I really didn't care for the snake. And then it got out in our apartment and we never found it.
Oh no.
So I was terrified in my own apartment that one day I was going to open up a cupboard or a drawer and I'd find a snake up there somewhere. It wasn't poison. I mean, it was a python. It wasn't poisonous or anything. I just didn't like him. I didn't feed him. I didn't no. And he, it was his thing. So probably part of the reason he's a starter and not a keeper, but among many other reasons. But, there was not much. I mean, the snake was in my house and there was our apartment, and there was not much that was going to overcome that. That was like, okay, I faced that fear, had it wrapped around my arm, still don't like it, and that's okay. Because then we at least know our limits, and we know we've tested that fear. And I was much more confident with the snake in the apartment until it got loose.
Yeah.
Never did find it. Moved out, everything out, every piece of furniture out of that place, and it was gone. I have no idea.
That's strange. Well, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting way of thinking about fear as a motivator, which is more positive than negative when you look at it that way. So I think that's an important perspective.
Yeah, I think too, people think that fear is an enemy. And fear, fear drives our adrenaline. It keeps us safe in scary situations. I look at, fear is a friend. It's someone we learn from. It's someone, if we're feeling fear, why? What's scary about it? I think it's a learning opportunity, more so.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And yeah, I think that it's something that, like I said, I've been exploring, and, I've talked a little bit about fear and failure in leadership on some of my own content, and it's something that is like stigmatized a lot of times, right? And it's a lot of negativity, and there's companies out there that handle particularly failure really well, and they make lots of learning experiences out of little failures, and stuff like that. But
I
yeah.
think that really depends on the culture of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Like so for anyone listening, is the culture of your organization allow risk, right? Allow people to take calculated risks and occasionally will fail, but in the sake of innovation, for the sake of learning, for the sake of training, so I mean, a lot of it I think comes back to that culture and environment that's fostered in an organization. And do people feel empowered to bring new ideas and bring new things to the table and try new things that may or may not be successful?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think it is really about that reframing, right? If you're familiar with Dave Ramsey, like, I mean, his whole shtick is finances and stuff, but like he talks about providing opportunity for young people, like, while they're still in your home and your care, of like providing opportunities for non-lethal failure, right?
I like the non-lethal part.
Right. So, but like whether it's decisions with their money or, it's kind of thing, it's like, yeah, like there's opportunity to learn, right? And you provide that space is key to development.
Well, and I mean, you have children, I have children, and I see a lot of them are being coddled to the point where they're not allowed to make decisions as when they're younger or a teenage, or even as a teenager. And then, that's the time to make mistakes, because our legal system is much more forgiving. So making it a non-legal, right, kind of decision. But I mean, or just in general, people are more forgiving of someone that's young that's making a mistake versus someone that's in their 20s making a mistake. And that's, not that they're not continuing to learn, but I think as parents, we do a big disservice to our children by not allowing them some, again, calculated freedom to take those calculated risks that are within, and giving them options instead of making decisions for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So we went from flying helicopters to leadership to parenting advice now.
yeah. Well, you're a leader at home too, right?
That's absolutely.
So, like, speaking of your crew, right? As the pilot, right? You have a crew, maybe you have some passengers. You're also working within the hierarchy of the military. Can you speak a bit about the dynamic and the effect of being a good follower on your leadership?
Wow. Yeah, I think I have a hard time being a follower. Might be my personality or something. I'm not sure.
Same here.
So like right now I am vice president. Next year I'll be president-elect, and then I'll be president of the National Speakers Association North Texas chapter. And I have a really hard time when I see something not, like, okay, what do you think? And not jumping in. But what I'm fortunate enough to have is a current president and the president-elect who I'll be following, who want those contributions. They know, Elizabeth, let's hear it. I can see on your face you want to say something, right? Or you want to jump in on something. And so, again, it becomes about that culture. But I think for so long, being a good follower made me a better leader. Because I knew how to, I knew I could observe the leader, and I knew like what I needed from them. I didn't always get it, but I knew what I needed as a follower. And so I think the best leaders have been a follower. It's not natural. There's no natural born leader. It's a cultivated skill and muscle that we all choose to grow or not, or we're thrust into environments where we have to grow it. And it's a little painful that way, kind of like starting out working out January 1st after all year of not working out. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a matter of that. But, I think especially in the military, unless you're the head of the military, the chief of staff, right, is the highest up. Actually, the president is the highest up. as our commander in chief, I mean, everyone's a follower and a leader. Everyone. The only one that's not a leader in any way is that they call it an E1, enlisted one, that all the way back when you first join in basic training. And everyone has some level of accountability and responsibility to someone else. And even if you're not leading, even if you're not the lead, like you're an E1 and you're not the leader of someone else, you still have an accountability and responsibility to your soldiers at that same level. So I really think it's just a mindset, right?
Yeah.
It's a mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I firmly believe in and have talked about as well is, everyone can exhibit leadership qualities and be a leader in a given moment. But, they maybe are not leaders by career or by definition. Right. So,
yeah, I think positional leadership is overrated. I think it matters much, much more to be an influential leader. Sometimes that influence comes from the position, but it's not about the title as much as your communication and how you handle yourself and others in those situations that creates and cultivates more influence.
Mic drop.
Mm-hmm. I am.
Yeah. I mean, that's it there, right? Wow, a lot of value in the last little bit here, Elizabeth.
I'm just going, okay, this is some stuff I haven't said before. It's not in my normal speech, so you're pulling out some good questions and bringing some good answers.
Good. That's my goal. I always try and improve my ability to interview and get some good value. So I've been getting it. This is all for my benefit too, but I know the listeners are going to be loving this. As we're wrapping up in the next few minutes, Elizabeth, is there something that you got on your chest that you really want to share with folks listening?
Oh my goodness. You mentioned earlier, so let's close the loop on that. You mentioned earlier that I have an acronym, right, around flying. And so let's kind of close the loop with that. So to me, like the bottom line of leadership is that we lead ourselves, because nobody wants to follow that wishy-washy leader that doesn't exude confidence and competence and is showing up at their best. So it starts with you leading yourself. So I call it fly. Mm-hmm. First, lead yourself. Because when we lead ourselves, others want to follow. It comes back to that influence we just talked about, right? It comes back to whether you have a position or not. I had people that were coming to me in an organization that did not work for me and said, I want to work for you. Right? Because of that influence and that confidence and how I treated my people. And they saw that and they wanted to be part of my organization. And in my corporate job, I worked after the military before I started speaking. I ended up getting promoted way faster than my peers because people wanted to work either on a team with me, on a project with me, or wanted to work for me.
I like that acronym, and I like that the way you describe that. So my next question, you can either elaborate a little more on the point you just made, or maybe there's something else you want to say. But one of my last two questions for every guest: what is one thing you know about life or leadership that you wish everyone knew?
The one thing that I wish everyone knew is what matters most as a leader is how you show up when things are difficult. You can't hide. You got to show, you got to be visible. I have a whole acronym that I teach in a longer time, but it's vested. You got to be visible, empathetic, solicit data from good sources, think strategically, right? Make effective decisions. E is effective decisions. And then D, delegate productively. Super simple. That's a whole nother training. Super simple, right? But to be proactive in how you show up and to make a difference when things are difficult, other people are struggling, things are difficult. And we've had lots of that this last year. So simple way, vested, that you can show up and elevate your leadership every day.
Well, I mean, goodness knows we need more people, more leaders showing up. It's not easy out there. And I mean, there's only more issues coming up each day. I mean, whether it's political or racial turmoil or economic issues, or like there's so many things, like you said earlier, that it's there's so much going on in leadership. It's such a fast pace, and we need to show up when it's tough.
Yep. And show up well, like show up vested in yourself, in your organization, and your leader. They vest in you, right? When you're working for an organization and they match your 401k, or, they do things to vest in you, but you're vesting in them too. It works both ways.
Thank you. Last question. When it's all said and done, what 3 words do you want used to describe your life?
Oh, wow. She inspired me.
I like it. I'm inspired. Job well done.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation, Elizabeth. Lots of great value. I know you've got lots of stuff going on and lots of great resources. Why don't you share with the listeners where we can connect with you? And you mentioned courses and stuff that you have. So why don't you give that a plug?
I do. So first off, a gift. I did an online course on motivation called Master Your Motivation, because everybody seemed to be struggling. So it has 3 confidence boosting strategies. It has 30 ways to be motivated in 30 minutes, and none of them cost money. Yay. Right.
Perfect.
So just ways that we can be more motivated. I'm constantly adding new content. I'm currently right now working on a module for work-life balance, because I've gotten a lot of questions about that, work-life balance during difficult times. And I've got a plan, a niggling plan right here to work on one about focus. How do you stay focused? So nothing super deep or takes a huge amount of time, but a lot of breadth and material in there. And, I had a $99 price tag on it, but I'm going to give it to everyone for free right now, because we need more motivation in this world, and
awesome.
We need more confidence, and we need more right now than we ever had before. So it's go to Soar Your Life, and I'm going to give you the link to put with the show notes.
Perfect.
But Soar, SOAR, yourlife.com, and it takes you right to the coupon code link, so you can bypass the $99 and get the course for free. And I welcome you to share it, and share it with your family or coworkers or anyone else that you feel might need that little bit more motivation. And if you feel inspired to, in that course are links to my social media, and I'm easy to find. I'm Pilot Speaker on everything. My website's Pilot Speaker. I make it really easy. So I hope you connect with me.
Absolutely. Well, we will make sure to have all those links and social media handles and everything in the show notes. Check it out at rashadobalanda.com. This has been an amazing conversation with Elizabeth McCormick. Thank you so much for having time with me today. Appreciate it so much.
An honor and pleasure. Thank you.
If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, would you head over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe, leave me a rating, leave me a review, and share this with a friend. It spreads the word and helps the podcast grow. You can also find me on social media at R.E. Oberlander. Until next time, stay awesome.